What's crazy is when you look at last week's episode and the whole setup of who Aino's new tool would be, it's pretty crazy to see how his arsenal is getting built up, and he very much is playing the long game. He's not trying for short-term rewards, he's playing to win in the long term. But then this episode comes around and sets up Horikita kind of getting her own tool in Ken, someone who very much has shown a lot of interest in her, very much is trying to be the caring guy who's there when she needs him. She looks like she's down in the dumps on the bench. He's there to try to cheer her up. Obviously, we see it fails miserably, but you can tell he has a lot of interest in her. And the fact that our boy's like, use him as I use you. The dude has no chill, but what he says makes a lot of sense, right? Because the thing with Aino is he's not the type of person who uses someone and doesn't give them something back in return. He's very good at manipulating in a way that people end up benefiting under his rule, where someone like Ryuuen just would obviously beat them to a bloody pulp. We saw the girl's leg. I mean, that wasn't Horikita. That was him most likely using a hammer, twisting, doing something, and making her so goddamn scared that she would blame it on her rather than the person actually responsible, as to not have it happen to another leg. It's different. It's really interesting to see the different types of manipulation, and one could argue there isn't too much difference in terms of emotional psyche, because seriously, we know damn well, I know if he needed to go the route of breaking someone's leg, I think he would do so. I don't think there's any debating that fact. I mean, we got a very brief taste of how far he was willing to go 2 episodes back or so, with the whole bullying scene, right? Yes, he didn't go as far as maybe it was being directed, but you know damn well if he needed to, he would have done so. But it's interesting to see up to this point the different tactics in terms of making people follow your way, but the difference of being so in your face about it and having people shit their pants when they see you versus someone who hides in the shadow and it makes everyone think, oh yeah, that was Horikita's idea or that was this person's idea, right? And I'm interested to see because I really wasn't expecting them to go to the nurse's office, because when it was, oh, go talk to Ken and basically have this all work out, I was like, okay, she'll go talk to him and then something will come up. But instead, of course, we end up going to the nurse's office, and you knew immediately it was a trap. Personally, I was thinking it was going to be something similar to that of 2 or 3 episodes back when the girls ganged up and it was not so nice of a situation. But I thought it was far more effective to probably make a lot of people think that was going to happen, and then you see this bastard and just the leg and everything. Like, the whole bribery of give me 1,000,000 points and this all goes away unless you want to take this to trial. Already, she doesn't want to make trouble for the brother who shows no interest in her. On top of just everything else, like, there's no proof. And if the only proof you have is a victim saying it's you, obviously who's going to win that court case, right? It's not going to be her. And now to add in the whole groveling, I don't know if they're going to go the route of points, because very much so, if, like, they could build up the points, sure, maybe they would be able to pay it off. But at the same time, I just kind of feel like there's going to be something with Ken and the whole match that they're building up to, because over the course of this episode, we get the impression that our boy he doesn't want to win. He actually wants to heavily lose. But I'm starting to wonder if maybe he wanted them to look like they're losing to make all these different pieces connect and then obviously end up winning for a different reason. I don't know. But I think what this is doing a really good job at is when you look at the start of the season with the boat and that little mini arc, and now when you look at what's basically track and field in any other show, they're really not the most interesting settings on paper. They're really not. It's like, oh, go find a trader on a boat and go play some generic track and field things. But the thing that makes this so crazy is that the way the rules are handled. You can look at the moment where you end up with the punch scene, right? And then the teacher comes in like, yo, what's going on? And they're like, oh, nothing, I fell. Well, the victim says, it's fine, they walk away. You don't really see that in school shows because a blind man can see someone got punched, there'd be a bit more questioning. But because the way this school operates, anything can be bought with points, and literally, you know, the worst of things that could happen, whether that's a leg being broken, whatever the hell that was, to someone getting punched in the face, right? There's no limits of what can happen if no one's caught. And that's what's interesting about certain characters and how far they'll go. Like, you can look at a character like Ken, he's very gung-ho, he's very arrogant at times, but he's not the same degree as this piece of shit, who just is so manipulative. But the show would be so much more boring if we didn't have someone who wanted to paint a target on Horikita's back to the point that we end up in the moments that we're at. I truly thought this was going to be more of a setup episode. I mean, really, the first half of this episode wasn't anything too crazy, and that, don't get me wrong, that's not a bad thing. I mean, setup episodes are important, but it's crazy to see how 5 episodes in a row, they've always done something shocking without feeling like they're trying to outshock the previous moments, right? And I think because it's not trying to outdo itself, it lets all these individual moments, whether it's the bullying scene, whether it's the leg scene, whether it's all these different moments, really feel like, goddamn, we don't know what's coming next. And the fact that you can reveal so much information, like a person who very much is a traitor, but why is she a traitor? And the fact that she'll lie right to your face. There's so much to dive into, and that's what makes the character interactions in Classroom of the Elite, especially with Season 2, so compelling, is that you just don't quite know where it's going next. And even though he says he doesn't want to win, I'm kind of curious if now there is a path to victory that he'll want to do, or if it's better for the long-term goal for them to still lose. Either way, I'm hoping that Ken will be someone who will be a part of Horikita's arsenal, which then in return would be a part of his arsenal, right? You know, it's interesting to see. It almost reminds me of like the top person in a mafia family, right? You have your general people who answer to you, but then they have people that answer to them. It almost feels like he's building a web in that type of way, but there's very few people who will ever know who's truly at the top of the food chain, right? And the fact that said person continues to say other people give him orders, he very much blends in plain sight. But there's going to come a point where the cat will be out of the bag, and I'm interested to see what characters will have seen it coming, sort of, like they've had their suspicions, but now it's finally been revealed, or they're going to be completely blindsided and they're going to feel like an idiot. I think the arrogant personalities would definitely be the ones who would feel like an idiot the most, but it would be very interesting to see just what type of person Ayano would then become after he was exposed and no longer had to hide in the shadows, sort of a thing. But leave it to Classroom of the Elite. For an episode that should be a setup episode in any other show, nothing too crazy happening, the way they can then just incorporate those crazy elements and have it turn into something so memorable, this is why we love the show and why it keeps our interest pretty easy 7 days in a row. It was pretty insane, though, to see just how they were going about the cheating, because on paper, if you were to like put yourself as like a spectator in the distance, it'd be pretty easy to look at a lot of what's happening in terms of the punching, to the hitting, to the pushing, to the tripping, as something that could look like an accident, or you didn't even see it happen because of the distance. But the way they're going about just being so manipulative on a physical level like that, it's no surprise that people are getting hurt left and right. And I think that's what kind of makes the leg scene brilliant, is because you see all these different injuries, you're like, okay, yeah, it's bad, but I mean, people are limping, it's not the end of the world. And then you see how far this man can go, and you realize that, holy shit, if he doesn't get caught, he'd gladly shoot you in the head if that meant victory, it feels like. Classroom Elite is absolutely nutty right now. I'm very excited to see how long this is going to last. It kind of feels like we're building up to the finish line of this mini event, but maybe it'll last longer than I'm anticipating. But either way, I'm excited to see where they're going to go from here. But thoughts down below, leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here. Till next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.